Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Bit weird sat there waiting for my own talk to start, but yeah, thank you. Um, yeah, so today I've been asked just to give a quick 45-minute talk about what it takes to make a drone show with impact. My name's John Partridge. I'm head of production at Celestial. Most people know me by JP. And yeah, let's go.
What you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing. The real you is not a puppet which life pushes around. The real deep down you is the whole universe. And then we get this strange feeling that we have never had, see, in our lives, except occasionally by accident. Some people get a glimpse that we are no longer this poor little stranger and afraid in a world it never made, but that you are this universe, and you are creating it at every moment.
So there's nothing better than just to get straight into it, show the impact. And for me, it never gets old seeing a drone show of that scale. I don't know how many of you have ever seen a drone show in person. I don't know if we can do a little show of hands. Has anybody ever seen one in person themselves? A couple of people, yeah. A couple of guys worked with it here. Yeah, so that's really interesting. Probably 5 or 6 in a pretty full room. So it shows that we're still in a really early stages of drone shows being used in entertainment. If you can come to a show like PLASA and only a handful of people have actually ever seen one, that shows how early we are with this. Before I go any further, I'll just give a quick introduction of myself. Like I say, my name is John Partridge. I've chucked the whole bio up there. I won't go through all of it now, but essentially the quick story of myself. I've always known since I was very, very young, I wanted to be in this industry, this entertainment industry. I went through school, college, always being the guy at the back of the room, not the front of the room. Went straight into the National Youth Theatre, which gave me a really, really good foundation for theatre and kind of lighting, sound. Suddenly decided quite quickly that I wanted to be in the music industry. Cold emailed PRG on a very late night, basically begging them, I'll do anything to get in with you. Received an email about an hour later saying, come in on Monday. Subsequently ended up doing 6 years with PRG, all the way from coiling cables to London 2012 Olympic Open ceremony. From then, really got the bug for the touring sector. Ended up touring quite extensively with PRG all around the world. Moved from there into my own lighting and production design practice, which again really furthered kind of my career progression. And then, as everyone probably in this room can identify with, it hit a pretty quick buffer with COVID. All of touring stopped. And then quite serendipitous, I met Celestial. They set up essentially next to me where my workshop was. And yeah, very quickly I got integrated into that team. They needed a production designer for a show we were doing in Adelaide in lockdown. So we were, thousands of miles away, producing a show on the other side of the world with no ability to go over there. We did that project, and then very quickly I progressed through Celestial to now hold the head of production role. And I'm sort of responsible for all of the production management, creative development team, and technical direction of all of our shows. Quick overview of where we'll go today. I'm going to try and keep a bit of a broad brush of drones. I know some people may have never seen drones or not even know what a drone show is, so I'll go through that bit of the creative process, what producing one of these shows actually looks like, and then some pointers on how you can best leverage the technology if you ever want to really give it that impact. That there is really nothing else like that on the market. And yeah, then we'll do a bit of a Q&A session. If anyone has got any questions, it's quite a specific thing for me to cover in 45 minutes, a completely new medium. So if you have any questions, just send them over and I'll do my best to answer them. And then obviously we can chat after if you want to continue. So let's get straight into it. The magic of drone shows. For me, like I say, there is nothing quite like it. We have nothing out there of this scale that reflects kind of progression of technology and is a truly new medium. There are not many things like that. Again, representative that there is no other drone providers here today, to my knowledge. We're still in that early stage. The definition of what a drone show is, a bit of what Google says. It's essentially a synchronized ballet of multiple UAVs, so small drone aircraft, similar to if you went to Argos and bought a hobby drone, except we use hundreds or thousands of them all together, and that is called a drone swarm, essentially. And then using software and pre-programming, we're able to control those drones autonomously in the sky to produce animations or logos as a real broad brush. A brief sort of history of drones, because it's quite interesting. I keep going on about how fresh this is, but if you go through just a timeline, the concept literally only started in 2010. It was pioneered by Intel Computers as almost a bit of a passion project within Intel. They set up a division to come up with this new forward-thinking technology. And it was only 2012 that the first public drone show happened, and that was 50 drones. And then rapidly progressed up to 500 drones in 2016. So only a 4-year progress from 50 to 500. And then very quickly, another 2 years later, we're doing 1,200 drones for the Winter Olympics in South Korea. So the progression of the technology has been pretty rapid. And I think, as everyone knows, and most people have probably seen them on TV, they have predominantly been part of the kind of major event circuit for a number of years. So your New Year's Eves, your large-scale fireworks shows, your big one-off celebration events. But there's definitely a shift in the market now where they're becoming more and more accessible. And something that at Celestial we've been doing is bringing the technology that's used on these very large shows into really small environments where traditionally they wouldn't have been able to be deployed. So yeah, what is the appeal of these drone shows? What makes them so special? Well, the main thing for me is that we're able to do something which no other medium can really do, and we can do storytelling in the sky. We can literally write a story if we want to, or we can do kind of figurative kind of animations or characters in the sky. We can throw up your brand. We can, tell that unique story that really there isn't any other, way out of there. Fireworks, I love fireworks, but you're restricted. I think the best sort of figurative or narrative piece you could do is a heart or a star. I think that's where that technology has gone. And again, some parity to fireworks, but, it's pretty much unmatched in terms of size and scale. My biggest feedback I get from clients is that when they first see their show in the air, they had no idea it was going to be that big. Some of our animations for some of our big corporate branded shows, we're nearly 200 meters or greater in width at over 100 meters high. So you're talking, football pitch and greater width. And then we're deploying that in a city centre or, over the Thames in London with the world watching. There was simply nothing similar to that. again, this is an interesting one for me. This is not many people really think of this, but we have quite a unique way of we can lay the drones out in a pretty hidden and kind of condensed space in an urban environment. We can launch the drones in complete darkness and relative quietness. If you have a PA or ambient noise, it will definitely mask the sound of the drones. So we can reveal something in the sky that the audience have no idea is even formed. And then when you combine that with the scale of it, it is just incredible impact. And again, it does sound a bit cliche, but it is almost an otherworldly experience. I mean, there's nothing like it. And then one for me, which I always come back to, it is a technological wonder when we get into exactly how it all works in a minute. I do say this, it's kind of so clever it shouldn't really work. There's so much processing going on and so much technology being used and reliance on other communication technologies all together, coming together for not just one object that's in the air, for hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands in certain scenarios. And we actually now, in some of our shows, we make a feature of the takeoff and landings, because what we figured really early on is that there's nothing really like seeing a number of objects, hundreds of objects, all in a regimented position or grid, all being controlled autonomously. And that was something audiences hadn't really seen. And we were finding that clients want to see the takeoff, the landing, all of the kind of behind the scenes things that we didn't traditionally show. So now some of our feature shows that we do, the takeoff and landing is almost as important as the show in itself. We'll go on to a few interesting case studies. This was a project that we did for Samsung, and this one really highlights kind of scale. So this is Canary Wharf. This is not too far from where we are now. You've got the Thames just here. And they originally came to us they wanted something to really catch the headlines, to launch their new Samsung Galaxy S24 mobile phone. So they had an in-person event, but they wanted, again, to surprise the audience with something they hadn't really seen before and create a piece of content for that. So this UFO that we came up with, again, is just under 200 meters wide. We're flying over 115 meters high. And again, it appeared out of darkness and is flying down the Thames with a full Thames river closure, and also diverted traffic from London City Airport, which we'll get into some of the complexities of these shows later on, which is, as you can see, flying that less than a quarter of a mile away from London City is quite a challenge. I'll just play a little video of that show because it sort of shows kind of gives a bit more context than just words can.
All ground crew, please head to the grid. Compass Cal on 9, go. Houston to the ground, that's 552 drones online and in standby.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Houston for Kilo, that is clear for launch.
So again, that demonstrates, a lot of kind of what I was saying about the scale, the kind of urban environment, a non-traditional experience for their audience members, and also produced a TV campaign out of the back of it. So from the top end of a kind of a corporate client, we go the other end to a unconventional in the respect of this was the first drone show ever integrated into a UK music festival. So this was last year, so 2023. No one had really cracked the mold of how you get a drone show into a music festival. So if you can imagine seeing a CAD plan of any UK festival, almost every inch of space has been taken up by something. But we were able to work with Secret Garden Party to put together a plan which worked for them and for us, and became part of the kind of ops pre-planning and pre-design to enable us to fly a drone show 100 meters away from the audience. Others in other countries had tried, and sort of the closest they've been able to get is sort of 600, 700, 800 meters away from the audience, which doesn't really, you can't really say it's part of the festival, to be honest. It's sort of a billboard a long way away. Whereas this, going back to the element of surprise, the Space Invader appeared out of complete darkness. Nobody knew it was there. I think I say here that literally only 5 people knew we were on site. We were in a hidden location. So it was a complete surprise to everybody. And it kick-started the what they call a Saturday spectacle, which is kind of a tradition at Secret Garden Party. But further to that, and when we get into kind of where I see the industry going in the future, we integrated all of the kind of other conventional departments into this drone show. So we had fireworks. Really, really simply, we shot fireworks at the drones and blew it up, blew the Space Invader up to start the show, which is a really, really nice gag. We had video, audio, and show lighting, which all appeared and all synced to a timecode piece of music, which lasted about 20 minutes. And again, for the type of audience at Secret Garden Party at 11 o'clock at night on the Saturday, when you're really in festival mode, seeing that appear out of nowhere was quite a spectacle. And yeah, it was really, really impressive to see come together. And then we go from one really good music festival, we go all the way to the top, and probably one of my proudest elements, shows that I've worked on, especially definitely this year, was Glastonbury Festival. We're, as a company and myself, are based 15 minutes from Glastonbury. So, and with my touring experience and production background, I'd been in Glastonbury for 10, 15 years. So when I started working for Celestial, it was a natural that I was knocking on the door every day to try and see if we can make this work. The problem at Glastonbury, like I alluded to with Secret Garden Party and most other festivals, is space. There is simply no space at Glastonbury to even consider deploying a drone show in conventional sense. So a few people had a look at it, taking off behind the pyramid stage, or closing an arena down, or even cutting capacity of a field, cutting tickets to set up a kind of a drone display. But in the end, we worked really, really hard with the overall ops planning team, and we shuffled a few things around, and we found an area of land which is not commonly used, but is still within the perimeter fence of Glastonbury, and is still 100 meters from the pyramid stage. And that gave us this incredible opportunity to open Glastonbury on the Wednesday night with a more traditional opening ceremony, which they haven't really ever had. And yeah, I've been told that almost 75,000 people came to watch the show just because it was something new and exciting and hadn't really been seen before, and it evokes a lot of curiosity about this drone show. What is it? What's going to be up in the sky? So the pyramid stage arena was completely full. But we also, this image here is taken nearly a kilometer away, and I've received images of 1.5 to even 5 kilometers away, where people were still being able to see the show in its pretty much full effect. Again, it's incredible privilege to have these opportunities, but it just shows you that the progression of technology, that it's now becoming mainstream, that drones will be pretty much commonplace at these events, for kind of all of the reasons we've talked about. And it also just looks super cool. And the final sort of quick case study that I'll go through, going back to the first show I worked on with SkySong, with Celestial, it's called SkySong, and this was a project that we did in Adelaide, Australia, in the middle of lockdown. We were the kind of headline act of the Adelaide Fringe Festival, and we were on the other side of the world. It was a really ambitious project. It encompassed a absolutely colossal hologauze, the largest kind of hologauze outdoor product that's been used. Also, kind of a large lighting rig, AV, kind of haze. Pretty much every box was ticked for this production. As it was really something that collectively we all believed that these are the types of events that also are going to be popping up, that people will be going to see a drone show as a ticketed experience. And that's definitely something that I kind of really feel that is going to become commonplace, and is something that we are doing at the moment around the country. But SkySong was the sort of test pilot almost for that. And we managed to sell tens of thousands of tickets for a show almost an hour and a half out of the city in a remote vineyard. And it was a really, really special project to be part of. And it also, on a technical front, it really showed that you can, so creatively, for example, earlier in the show, we have the butterflies appear on these screens, and then the drones seamlessly sort of tear off that hologauze screen and up into the sky. So you've got this kind of blend of mixed media, more traditional kind of video, they then transition up into the sky. Yeah. So moving on, technical breakdown. So I'll go through kind of the technicalities of the actual drone technology, because I feel it's quite important that kind of everyone understands, what we're dealing with. Like I said, traditionally most airframes, as they're called, or aircraft, are a quadcopter design. So it's simply very similar to a kind of a prosumer or pro drone that you could buy down the shops. It has 4 propellers, a simple battery. All of ours have been designed purely for autonomous flight, so they have a lot of the other kind of technical elements removed, and they have a large underbelly light, which is essentially a 1200 lumen RGB LED module which sits underneath. To control the positioning, we use 2 technologies. We use GPS, which everyone will be very commonplace, very used to using, but we have a secondary level of that called RTK, which is a more precise version of GPS. It amalgamates lots of satellite all together and gives you down to 5 centimeter accuracy. So that's how we get this real accurate positioning on the ground and in the sky. We then further some other technologies that we use. We use more kind of old school RF radio telemetry. So the drones will feed back over RF their current battery status, drone health. For every drone that's in the air, will relay that information back multiple times a second back to the pilots. We'll then use conventional Wi-Fi to do the path uploads. So each of the drones will have its specific path to fly, and we use Wi-Fi to upload that. The paths and kind of drone batteries at the minute give you a 8-minute animation time plus the 2 minutes either side takeoff. But even in the last year, that's now pretty much becoming standard that it'll be up to kind of 15 minutes. And even in sort of the laboratories further afield, there are batteries of half an hour up to 45 minutes being produced. and that's been, in the last year, 2 years. Similar to your phone battery, that technology is rapidly increasing all the time, and then also the scope of what you can do with that is really, really improving as well. We run at 24 frames a second, so we can be on broadcast, flicker free, and we fly 2 meters spacing in the air. So sometimes the drones will look really close to each other, but it's sort of what I call the red arrows effect, where when you see the red arrows display team and they're coming towards each other, they look like they're going to hit. We use a lot of that forced perspective technique, similar to how they do, and actually the drones are never closer than 2 meters apart, and that's pretty standard for every drone operator around the world. But then when we're on the ground, we can reduce that down to about 1 meter spacing apart, just to condense the takeoff grid. And we use some kind of clever takeoff techniques to make sure that when they take off, they are staggered in their grids as they go up in the air. So even though they're 1 meter on the ground, when they take off, they're only ever 2 meters apart. How do we control all of this? Well, it's lots of software and lots of programming, but it's relatively conventional. We use standard animation programs. So if anyone's familiar with any of these programs, we use Blender, we use Unity, Cinema 4D, all pretty conventional. As an animator from another completely different industry, you could come in and be pretty quickly animating a drone show. It's essentially taking a 2D shape, animating it in 3D space, and then the software would do the rest. And that custom software essentially lets us, we'll take an image, let's say we have a smiley face, we'll dotify it essentially. So you'll produce an image. A smiley face will have a number of dots. Each one of those dots will become representative of a drone, which will be flying in the sky. And then our custom software that sits around the animation programs will convert those dots into the path files which the drones will follow. Whilst we're doing the animation, we have software level detection for any collisions. So if an animator does go a little bit AWOL and animate something which wouldn't be possible in the sky, for either being too fast or it's a direct collision, the animation software will flag that up, and they can address those issues in the animation phase. After that, if it's past that, we still go through a virtual testing. So we will simulate virtually the drone show multiple times. Again, just checking for any kind of speed issues or any collisions. When I say speed issues, what I mean is it is possible to animate something that physically the drone cannot fly to that point quick enough. Every drone has a speed limit as such, and it will not be able to fly faster than that. So it's possible to animate something which it just physically couldn't do. But our software, again, will flag that up. Once all that's completed, it just spits out what we call a JSON file, which is a large text file, but it does that for all of the drones. So say we've got 800 drones, we'll have 800 individual files containing all of the positional data for that specific drone. And then alongside that, all of the RGB color values, again, every 24 frames a second. So quite a lot of data is produced at that point, but it's reasonably simple. If you look at kind of other programming languages, it's pretty simple what we're doing. It's GPS coordinates and RGB values. And then moving on, we've got to site, we've laid all the drones out, we boot them all up, power them up, they connect to satellite, connect to RTK, and connect to our software. You'll see on the software, you can kind of see it here. This is a representation of where the drones would be laid out. Those drones laid out will all come online, and then the software, via the pilots, they can assign a path to those drones on the ground. And then essentially that drone knows that it now has its mission in the sky. When it launches, they will all launch at the same time, and they will each follow their individual path, similar to a record from start to finish. And it's the beauty of the animation software and all the testing we've done, that all of them running simultaneously at the same time, that they will not hit or collide or anything like that. the drones are very clever, but they don't have positional awareness of each other. We do all of that within the software, which is a little bit of a misconception. Some people do think that the drones all talk to each other, but they don't. We can solve all of that in the animation phase. And then whilst the drones are up in the air, essentially we have two pilots, very similar to a commercial airline. The pilots are simply as if a commercial airline is on autopilot. The two pilots are just monitoring telemetry data. So all of the drones are reading back in real time all of the telemetry data, the battery health, drone health, and the pilots are just monitoring that. And if they need to make any adjustments or they need to, return a drone home for any reason, they can do that. And yeah, when we come down to launch, like I say, the beauty is just triggering all of those drones all at the same time. And in the animation phase, they just won't collide. As you can imagine, there's quite a lot of safety and bureaucracy and kind of regulations that you have to follow. We, in the UK and the US, in the UK, you will follow the CAA guidelines. In the US, it's very similar, but it's the FAA. Essentially, the CAA will have a set amount of guidelines for drone swarm companies. So some of it is taken from, if anybody is a drone pilot, you'll have done a bit of this already, but this is a far more advanced set of rules. And when you really get into it, we're essentially set up pretty much the same as an airline. We just don't have any of the documentation for piloting. We don't have any of the documentation for passengers. And if you really get into it, we could probably be the UK's biggest airline by aircraft number. And there is a league table somewhere where allegedly we have been published as the biggest airline, much to EasyJet's upset. In terms of permissions, the CAA grant operators such as Celestial permission on a national level. So we don't have to go to them and say, hey, are we allowed to fly here? Can we fly here? Essentially, we have a blanket policy that we can fly anywhere in the UK as long as we have individual permits depending on local councils and safety advisory group permissions, any landowner permissions, and then if there's any other considerations, like I say, for the Samsung job, we had to close the Thames down for about 15, 20 minutes. Again, dealing with any kind of road or airport closure is very similar. Moving on to similar to fireworks, we have what we call a sterile area. In fireworks terms, they call it a safe zone, but we call it sterile zone. This is actually, we're sat somewhere in here in this building. This is Olympia. And I've done this as Olympia just to show us kind of what we would need to do if we wanted to do a drone show today outside the front doors as we're walking out. The yellow box represents a flight volume, so where the drones could fly in the sky, and the red would be the area that we would need to find a way to close down essentially and make completely sterile from anybody who's not involved in the show, so traditionally an audience. So again, that highlights some of the issue that we get when we get a kind of a client come to us and say, hey, can I do X in this location? This is sort of the biggest challenge you'll face, is finding a takeoff site, but also being able to shut down that kind of area would be quite problematic. And again, this is all relative. So if we said the company logo is 30 characters long, and we want to fit that in the sky, we would obviously need to go really wide flight volume, which again is going to push that sterile area even wider. So again, one of the biggest challenges that we sort of face, or any drone company faces, is finding the right location. Majority of the shows in the UK are flown around 400 feet, 120 meters altitude. And at that altitude, we need to put out what's called a NOTAM, which is a notice to airmen. So anyone flying a conventional aircraft in the kind of area, and also commercial airlines, will see on their systems and their pilot logs and records, they will see there is a drone show happening at this altitude, at this time and location. moving on to the creative process. Again, this is a good representation actually of taking a kind of dotified image and turning it into a real life drone show. So this is a T-Rex from our ticketed show, Evolution. The overall process is really similar to producing a short film. Some clients come to us and they have a really clear vision on what they want. They want to make a lasting impact on its audience, but some of them have kind of not many ideas, and they just want us to do something huge and really, really impressive. But again, the process begins with a lot of client meetings, identify the themes, like what is the story you want to tell. We try, it's a bit of a buzzword that we use, is we try not be clip art. We're not just trying to just put a logo in the sky for the sake of it. We're trying to tell a whole story about that, and using the kind of narrative-led storytelling that this medium can offer. We'll identify the length of show. Some shows only need to be 8 minutes. Other shows, we could use a technique of multiple flights. So we could do an 8-minute flight, and then another 8-minute flight, and then keep going almost. And we can do a seamless takeover in the sky. Look, your key imagery, that's then passed to the art department, which will further develop it into kind of concept art, a refined storyboard, and then a complete animatic, which if you're used to any producing films, an animatic is essentially a hand-drawn version of your final animation. That process can take anything from a few weeks to a couple of months to get through that process. From there, it's handed over to our animation team, which is a team of 5 people who will then take that storyboard, the script. They will then draw and develop all of those animations in the animation software. Once they're in 2D and then 3D, they'll assemble that into a show with all of the transitions in between the elements put together. They'll then go through and put all of the color and lighting effects, which if there's any lighting programmers in the room, it's very similar how we program the lighting for there. So it's kind of sine wave, waveforms, very similar to that. We'll then, by this point, we've probably got a bit of audio as well coming on as a separate work stream. They will be building a soundtrack. The first video I played you had a narration by Alan Watts. Again, that would be produced at the same time, and we will time the 2 elements together. Takeoff and landing is built. Again, we make a feature of that now. We will put those elements together. The animators will then go through, like I said, the safety testing process, and then if required, we will do a pretty extensive previs kind of generation technique using either the native 3D visualization tools, or we can go all the way up to using Synchronorm Depends, if anybody uses that here, which is probably the kind of leading visualization tool for kind of the event industry. And again, we've gone through the final bits. The paths are uploaded. And then again, we're looking at probably a 3-month process to go from start to finish to create a drone show. Before you've had that initial inquiry to getting something you're able to fly, it's about 3 months. I've said it again, audio is really key. As we know with most shows, it enhances that experience. There's a lot more you can do with a show when it's not on mute. You can tell more stories. You can, really engage the audience. And again, going back to this, using all different types of kind of audio, multimedia all together, really, really brings in that kind of emotional impact. Making it more powerful and memorable. And again, we touched on the pre-visualization. We can go. We've done jobs with clients where we've completely 3D scanned the whole area they're flying. This, modeled the London Eye, built a huge world in Depends. Lighting programmers have put their elements in. Fireworks have put theirs. Drones have put their elements in. and it's really, really important. We also use cue points quite extensively. If anyone uses that bit of software for time coding, most of our shows are built via time code, and we use cue points to trigger them. Couple of quick examples of some of the previous work. This was for Sky Song. Again, just gives you a quick visualization about how the different elements are going to work. Yeah, it was quite a complicated thing. So actually what we've got here is we've got dronified video content. So we did a virtual drone show on the hologores, real life drone show in the air, and we had nearly 2,000 pixels embedded into the ground. Again, really, really driving home this kind of audiovisual kind of extravaganza almost, I guess you'd call it. So moving on, so we've created our animation, we've got it in software, we've pre-visualization, we've done all the previs. Now we're going to go and deploy it. Pretty similar to producing a live event, just lots of, like I touched on, it's getting a lot of permissions from local authorities. It's working with SAG, safety advisory groups. It's dealing with local kind of regulations, road closures, number of desktop and in-person site surveys. We have to do a technical site survey by CAA rules. So we have to go to a site, set up some of our equipment, and just check for firstly, that we've got satellite coverage. Secondly, there's no magnetic interference, which would throw the drone's compass off. And then, yeah, just pretty standard production management, all the logistics, the crew, all the drones travel in very large flight cases, pretty similar that moving lights would travel in. And yeah, we'll then conduct a test flight at our airfield. Onto the show day itself. The really exciting bit, we've got all this way now. We need about 8 to 10 ground crew to set the drones out. You can see them all here in the meter spacing. We use GPS datum points to mark out the exact location where they need to be on the ground. And we can adjust that grid to fit in. So, you could have a long thin grid or a square grid or, hexagonal. Yeah, I touched on a couple of pilots. We set up what we have to call Houston, quite extravagantly named. But that's where the pilots live. They're sort of self-contained in that bubble. And then we'll lay all the drones out, power them up. They'll connect to satellites and pick up the RTK antenna, and then they're ready to go. Once all the paths are laid, the drones are armed. It's just a time of waiting for the moment to press the button. One element here, just to say that we learned really, really early on that pretty robust comms is really vital when delivering these shows, and the CEA were really supportive of us to say that, we were the first drone company to switch to the Riedel Bolero system purely because of its resilience. And when you're dealing with aviation specifically, we could be dealing with a live airport. We could be dealing with, having commercial aircraft flying above your heads. We need to coordinate with them, and having a really good comm system is absolutely vital for that. Because like you say, the scale of what we're doing and how long it takes to get them in position and back down again can be kind of problematic, especially when you're flying in sort of central London. So rounding sort of off, we've talked about it a lot now, but drone shows for me, it's all about the impact. There's nothing really like it that can produce that kind of emotional storytelling. We can take an audience member on a journey. Like I say, some experiences we've had really early on. We had people completely silent. We've had people crying, which I hadn't really seen at a music festival before, based on or just jumping for joy. When you see, if a family show like Evolution, you know, the turtle appears right at the end of the show. It's a big moment. It's like the Blue Planet moment. The turtle's been saved. You know, kids are super excited by that. And yeah, so that impact of, again, we've talked about this quite a lot. That interconnectivity of all other elements. Challenging the audience. This was again something we learned really early on. You know, we have a pretty unique canvas in the sky to be able to get a message across that the audience weren't really imagining that they were going to be, you know, thinking about. You know, did you expect to be pondering if alien life exists when you go into your local fireworks display? And this show that we did in Frome we did exactly that. We did a UFO show, replacing their fireworks display. And again, bringing into all of the appearing in darkness, surprising the audience. And then, fourth thing I would do sort of to create that impression and last impression and impact is just using the technology and really pushing that technology. The timeline has been so short, you know, 10, 15 years of this technology being used, and ever increasing battery life, brightness. You know, the technology is going so quickly that in a few years, you know, the average is going to be into the thousands. They're going to fly far longer, and audiences, you know, will be almost probably underneath the drone show, or very close to them, just on how safe the drones will be. And yeah, I think there'll be a staple in most live event environments. So Q&A, if anyone has any questions, please shout through. I had to rattle through that pretty quickly, so thank you for bearing with me. But if anyone has any questions. Thank you. Yeah.
So is it, as it stands, it's the industries, it's all done, the animation's all done beforehand. Do you see it going procedural in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. It's live control is probably what you're referring to, and procedural generated animation. Those two things are pretty close. So at the moment, we have this pre-recorded script that the drones follow. Very soon, the drones will be able to fly fully autonomously and react in real time to live inputs on the ground. So yeah, I think we're a few steps away, but we're getting pretty close where you could have a, you know, either it's AI or procedurally generated or even artist driven is something we've been looking at. You know, could you have someone literally be drawing, an artist drawing in real time and the drones responding? And the answer Again, it's an average over a duration, and it's gusting versus constant wind speed that we need to look at. But essentially, it's a problem that everyone kind of faces. The drones have a max speed that they can physically fly at. So once it's over that, they would start to drift away. What you see in really high winds is that the drone will be almost like pitching into the wind and at max speed, and it can just hold itself to a point, and then it would lift away. Again, with technology progressing, smaller drone, bigger motor, longer battery, they can fly at higher wind speeds, is the sort of theory. It's something that's kind of rapidly advancing.